Model railway couplings can be an absolute pain in the neck. They cause derailments, they cause uncoupling when you don't want them to do, and they just genuinely ruin the experience of model railways. That said, I'm going to pit the most popular ones together today to find out the true champion. We've even got a scoreboard and we're going to judge them on the categories realism, usability, reliability, shunting, and of course, cost. So please stay tuned folks and let's find out which is the best one to use. So the coupling situation for model railways has always been one of a little bit of controversy, if you will, in that manufacturers just can't seem to get the perfect balance with what to offer with their models in terms of a coupling solution. It just seems to be that the default answer for many of them is just to include tension locks because that's what Grandpa Joe used to do, and it did him fine for 30 odd years. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with tradition, however, there is. The tension lock coupling in and of itself is an imperfect design for an imperfect world and quite often will lead to problems, especially when it comes to shunting or propelling a locomotive or train, and it can lead to headaches, and headaches lead to unpleasantness and sad feelings, which lead to less enjoyment in your model railway hobby. Are we following each other so far? Good. Okay. Now that isn't necessarily the fault of any particular manufacturer, it just seems to be, it is what it is. Third-party solutions come along and we have the advent of things like the KD coupler. We also have homemade solutions like Alan Jackson couplings and the Michael Jackson coupling and the Brian Kirby method, and there's a few other homegrown solutions and modifications based around the tension lock formula. But it is still basically a tension lock, with the exception of the KD, which of course is a knuckle coupling. Fast forward a few years and we have the invention of the magnetic coupling from Brio. You all remember Brio? Well, yeah, it's like that, but a bit more grown up and a bit more reliable. Hunt couplings from Westall Wagon Works, they kind of pioneered the way with this, and theirs is arguably the default de facto way to go with it. However, companies like Hornby and indeed Akira Scale have their own range of magnetic couplings available for you to use. So it is becoming more of a common thing to see magnetic couplings on layouts and exhibitions and things like that. So does that mean that there kind of is a underlying, what's the word I'm looking for? There seems to be agreement that there's an underlying problem with the status quo in regards to tension lock couplings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them all head to head today in this video once and for all, so we can find out actually what is the best coupling for you to use at home on your model railway or indeed your exhibition layouts. And let's crack on. Welcome to Sawyer Models of Lee, your stop for model railway items, locomotives and more. With an absolutely fantastic range of locomotives in O gauge, double O, N, TT and more, you are sure to find the perfect locomotive to fit your budget. Ordering simple, you can either order on his website, go to the shop, pick up the phone, or see him at one of the many trade shows they attend throughout the season, with one of the biggest trade stalls you will ever see at a model railway show. Thanks for your support, boys and girls. First up, it's those mod lads, the original OGs, the tension locks. Let's find out how they get on, shall we? Okay, here we are. So, first test, do they couple up on their own without having to use the intervention of a device? Let's find out. Speed step 20, rolling forward. Okay, and that is that. That is now in. And we'll reverse just to make sure it's coupled up properly. There we are. Okay, so that initially looks like it was a success. Let's take a closer look at the quality of the coupling. And we can see on this occasion that the tension locks have behaved themselves. They're now lined up nicely and they are not crossed over or anywhere, which would not lead to a derailment. But sometimes that does happen, so that's good that this time it hasn't done it. Now, uncoupling them, well, by hand, this is where the problem starts. So you kind of have to do this and then twist and then do that and then hope you don't damage your model and it comes apart. Cool, that's fine if it's just one wagon. If you've got a rake of 20 wagons behind you, that becomes a real problem. So, we have the humble paddle, which is the Westo wagon match one. And the idea is that you slide it underneath, let it drop, and it releases the hooks, pushes them upwards, and then you can just reverse your locomotive, remove the massive rod, and away you go, you are now uncoupled. So with the aid of a tool, it's pretty cool. However, tension lock couplings are not prototypical even slightly, and they look horrible. They really aren't the best looking thing in the world, and if you have a very, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're trying to get a really realistic model railway, something that, you know, you spend all the time on the weathering and get the track right and everything else, then you have this thing. This horrible plastic phallus sticking out the front. It's just, you know, not great. And of course, sometimes when you're propelling these things, we all know that they will buffle, you know, sometimes you'll get the hook on the wrong side and then that will cause the wagon to derail. So they're not perfect, but they do come with pretty much every piece of rolling stock, so there's no additional cost for wanting to use them because they already come equipped to most pieces of rolling stock when you come to buy something from the United Kingdom. They're easy to use, so let's have a look at the scoreboard, shall we? Oh yes, would you look at the production value on this. Now we have realism, usability, reliability, shunting and cost. These are the categories we're going to score the various coupling methods on, so let's get busy with it, shall we? Realism, tension locks are incredibly unrealistic, but they are still a coupling, so we're going to give those a 2 out of 10 for realism. Usability, pretty straightforward, and if you've got a tool, they work pretty well, but you can come a cropper if you're not careful, so we're going to give those a 5 out of 10. And again, reliability, we're going to give that a score of, again, 5 out of 10, because they are middle of the road. Shunting, pretty straightforward if you have a tool and a steady hand, otherwise it's an absolute nightmare. So we're going to drop a 4 for that, and for cost, of course, they come with everything, so 10 out of 10 for cost. Next up, we have the venerable KD coupling, or the knuckle coupling. As you can see here, we have what appears to be a Buckeye type connector over here. So we're going to see how it gets on. So I am just going to reverse the locomotive to it again, speed step 20 as before, see how we get on. Does it need my intervention? And as we can see, it's just sort of pushing the wagon without actually connecting up to it. As you can see there, that is not connected up. So immediately we're going to have to start faffing around and doing extra things to get the rolling stock to work with it. So let's just try that again. So let's just make sure, you know, can we do it this way? So yes, maybe with a bit of force you can get it to connect, and that looks like a nice strong coupling. It's obviously on there. There we are. Uncoupling them is really easily, you just literally do that and it's uncoupled. Or you can put magnets in the track. See, this is another issue with them. With the NEM ones, they can sometimes creep and separate and then you won't get a coupling at all and you're going to have to manually intervene. But for uncoupling, you can put magnets in the track and then you can get your locomotive and do this. Eventually the magnets will pick up, and then eventually after shuffling around for half an hour, the magnets will go, okay, yeah, and it will release. It'll throw these little pins here, and then the couplings will allow you to drive the locomotive away, and it works. Alternatively, you can use something like an uncoupling pick, which is not dissimilar to a screwdriver thing, and you sort of wriggle around in here, and that can release them. I don't have the pick to hand today, but that does work most of the times. What I found in my experience is what I would end up doing is doing this, and then pushing the locomotive or the wagon off the track and having to get the hand involved anyway. So despite what you may see online or at clubs, the KD coupling isn't actually the heralded hero that we all hoped it would be. And in actual fact, rather than solving problems, it just gives you a different set of problems that need to be solved, like adding extra weight or resistance to the wagon, especially if you have one which is so freely running, such as this Rapido example here. The wagon is just simply too light, and as soon as the loco tries to come up to it, usually it just knocks it away. So you either have to ram the locomotive into it at unrealistic speed, or wait the wagon, because if you try and do it slowly or at a proper speed, what you find happens is it just knocks the wagon away. So there we are. Interesting. Let's head over to the scoreboard and see how the KD couplers did. So not quite the hero we expected, but for realism we're going to give these a 7 out of 10 because they are based on knuckle coupling, so that's pretty good. Usability, less faff than a tension lock, but still a little bit involved, so we've got 6 out of 10 there. Reliability, once you get them coupled up, they are pretty damn strong. Shunting, great if you can get the pick and the magnets to work, but what really lets them down is the cost. These things are bloody well expensive, so if you're going to do your full layout with them, do set aside a small mortgage. Next up, we have magnetic couplings. Now these are the Hunt couplings. One of them is a pivoting one. In fact, they're both pivoting ones actually. You can just see that they sort of do this. That means that when you go propel your trains around tight corners, they in theory shouldn't derail or buffer lock or buffer clank because they can flex more. You can get rigid ones, but they're a lot stiffer, and as such sometimes on tighter curves you will encounter running issues like derailments and what have you. So let's fit these to the wagon and to the loco and see how we get on. Okay, there we are. That's all connected. I had to cut the camera because when trying to install one of these, the little clips snapped. I think that's because they're 3D printed, so just be careful when installing these because they can sometimes snap, but West Hill will apparently replace them for you if you contact them. So anyway, let's see how we get on with the hands-free coupling test. Put it into reverse, speed step 20, and there we go. Oh, there we are. So that was rather violent, which is fine, but we have got a nice positive connection there. It's quite close. One of the benefits of the magnetic couplings is you can get your sock to be coupled really closely, which gives a nice look. They're also unobtrusive. They look kind of nice. They're not as big and bulky as the tension locks are. How do we uncouple them? Well, you have absolutely zero solutions available to you for remote uncoupling. You're going to have to get involved with your hands, which means touching your models with your greasy sausage fingers and either giving it that, which is just horrible and embarrassing to be honest with you, or you can try what I call the click flick, where you do this. It doesn't always work though. Or you just get your fingers and give it one of these. Ideal for semi-permanently fixed rakes and faffing around with in a fiddle yard. Not so great for on a layout in front of everyone where they can see you handling your models. And there is of course the fact that when the magnet gets close enough, it's so powerful that it just rips the wagon forward, and it can, there you go, lift it a little bit and you can sometimes derail. That's just more of an issue with magnets in general rather than the coupling design. You can see there, look, it's really powerful, but they will not uncouple on a train, and they do go around tight bends and they're really affordable. So let's see how the magnetic coupling did on the scoreboard. Right then, how do the magnetic couplings do with scoring? So with realism, whilst they're not a true coupling, they aren't obtrusive, so that's pretty good. Usability, 8 out of 10, but they would have scored higher, but they do sometimes snap on installation if you're not careful. Reliability, again, pretty reliable, but because of that snapping issue, it has been marked down slightly. Shunting, it just isn't happening unless you get your meat hooks involved, 2 out of 10. And of course, cost, 7 out of 10. These can be picked up for a decent price. Excellent. So in terms of 00 gauge models, we've looked at the tension locks, we've looked at the magnetic couplings, and we've looked at the KD knuckle couplings. Arguably the 3 most popular coupling solutions available to you, the modeler, on today's market. However, there is one more method I want to explore with you here today. That method is 3 linked couplings. Now, you can't automatically uncouple with them, and you can't automatically couple with them, which is both good and bad. And they're quite fiddly, but I want to see just how fiddly they actually are. And are they actually worth doing? and converting models to use 3-link couplings with? Let's have a look, shall we? Right then, so here we are, the 3-link coupling challenge. As we can see, adding 3 links does one of a number of things for how your models look. One, it allows you to have pretty much all the intended buffer beam detail that you've paid for to be fitted to your model. Yes, you kind of have to install the updated hooks, which you can just see here on the Hellion 2. You can just see it there. I have just fitted the improved hooks, which is slightly out of scale, but not by much, and they really do blend in nicely with the scale of the model. You've also got the proper length chain on this one, but on the wagon I've just fitted my own sort of chain. It's not quite as big as the stuff you usually get for 3-link couplings, but it does still do the job rather nicely. Another thing is, if you look at the wagon, I've now been able to completely remove the NEM pocket, which gives a really nice clean look to the wagon. And should I want to upgrade this van with a air brake pipe or a vac pipe or whatever, or indeed use a more modern VEA van, which would have those appendages to begin with, then I can do, and it just gives a much nicer look. So what I'm going to do now is try and couple this up without cutting away. So this is all going to be one take, and we're going to see how well I can actually get away with this. Let's just move a bit more. There we are. Okay, that's about right. Okay, now bear in mind there's a camera in front of me here, guys, but I'm going to try my best. So first I'm going to try coupling the locomotive. Sorry, I'm going to couple the van to the locomotive. So we invest our thing in here, over the hook, and done. That's it. That's connected. That's linked up. Let's just see if we are actually connected there. There we are. And that's connected nice and simply. Let's uncouple it now. Get in there again. There we are, done. Uncoupled. Now, was that really so hard? I don't think so. Now, let's have a quick chat briefly about 3 links. So yes, I know I made that look really easy and simple and straightforward, but the stark reality is that you will at some point struggle to get your wagons coupled up if you use 3-link couplings. However, I feel the trade-off is worth the extra hassle and effort. Consider this, boys and girls. If we are railway modelers and we want our model railway to be as not realistic as possible, because that is impossible from the very nature of the fact that it's a model railway and the physics scaling down doesn't quite translate as it should do, but we want a fairly satisfying level of realism, then coupling manually really is the only way to go about that. And in the United Kingdom, we still couple locomotives to wagons with what is essentially a chain. Yes, I know locomotives have the instant thing, the screw link coupling and what have you, but on heritage railways, they still do use the 3 links. And even modern rolling stock does still use the 3-link system, or the instantler, no, not instantler, the screw link couplings, with, of course, some coaching stock and some freight stock using knuckle couplers in the semi-fixed rakes. So, with a combination of using KDs and 3 links, I believe that you can have a much more realistic shunting experience and a much more realistic model railway experience as well. Now, of course, when you are propelling a train, you will notice that the locos do indeed buffer up to the wagons, vans and rolling stock. Now, neither of these items have sprung buffers. Arguably, this would be one of the examples where having sprung buffers would be really useful. Sprung buffers aren't that difficult to install and you can get them readily available. So if you find that you do need sprung buffers, then you can actually install them on most pieces of rolling stock anyway, but it's not the end of the world. I certainly have never struggled, and long-term viewers of the channel, I mean long-term viewers, will know that actually I've used 3-link couplings before now, a couple of years ago, and pretty much arrived at the same conclusion I have today. And I haven't been using 3-link couplings all that time either. I have indeed swapped to KDs for a long time, the magnetic couplings for a long time, and of course tension locks again recently, as is proved by my Westall Wagon Works Paddle of Destiny again. And they all have a place and a purpose. So let's head over to the scoreboard and see how 3-link couplings fared up and which one came out on top. So here we are then, 3-link couplings, arguably the fine scale modeler's option of choice for couplings. Here we go, let's look at the scoring. Realism, 9 out of 10. I think you have to agree with me, in terms of it looking like a real life coupling and working like a real life coupling, I don't think you can get any closer than this. So I've scored these a 9 out of 10 for realism. Usability, it does take a lot of practice and there is a little bit of modification required to your roller stock to get them installed. Reliability, once you have them installed, actually they're pretty good. So I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10. Shunting, it's manual, isn't it? There's no automatic uncoupling available for 3-link couplings, and it does require somewhat of a steady hand and a somewhat keen and sharp eye and a tool. But as you saw me doing there, it wasn't actually that difficult and didn't really take any longer to uncouple them than it did any of the other options. Arguably, it was a little bit quicker. Now, as far as cost goes, we're going to give it 8 out of 10 because you can buy these packs from various manufacturers, the two main ones being Smiths and Wills. The Smith ones tend to have a sharper hook, which makes things a little bit easier. They come in kit form and ready built. The kit forms are about 8 to 9 quid, or you can use your own hooks and own chains and make your own version of it. With that said, all the scores are in. Let's head over to the final scoreboard and see which one came out on top. So here we are then, the final score table. Tension locks, 26 out of 50. Now, tension locks are always going to be on the market. You're never, ever going to get rid of them. And as we explored, there are some highs and low with all the couplings on this list, but this is just ultimately for a little bit of fun. They scored 26 out of 50. A nice, simple, out-of-the-box solution for someone that just wants to play trains and isn't bothered about ultimate realism or complete accuracy and just wants to be able to run trains and maybe do the occasional little bit of shunting. KD is coming in with a nice score for realism and functionality and reliability, but again, it's just a different set of problems when compared to a tension lock coupling, and the cost really does put them at a disadvantage here. They are not fantastically economical when it comes to money, so you really have to want them to work in order to fit your 30 wagons with them, so just bear that in mind. Magnetic couplings, fragile but fantastic. They offer close coupling, they're fairly inobtrusive, they're affordable to buy, easy to install, but you're gonna have to use your hands. There's no option for a tool or a mechanism to help you uncouple should you want to do a little bit of shunting. However, if you want to quickly swap out trains in a fiddle yard and put different wagons or coaches into a fixed rake, out of the way of the view of the general public, then they are a great option to consider. Finally, 3-link couplings, arguably the most accurate representation of a coupling on this list today, but not without its drawbacks. You're going to have to modify those roller stock pieces of yours and locomotives, and it does take quite a keen eye and a steady hand to get shunting working with a device. You can use a coupling tool to couple with them, so that is better. Ultimately, than just using your hands, be that on a fiddle yard or at an exhibition in front of the adoring public. Now, I've used them myself for a while, and I do get on with all of the couplings on this list, but for me, honestly, 3-links, they're too realistic not to use them. They look really cool. The trains look fantastic when they're all coupled up neatly, and when they move away, you get this nice little clank, 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 clank as all the tension's taken up in the train, and it just looks super realistic. That of course makes 3-link couplings our winner today for the Coupling Championships 2025. Of course we have tension locks running up third and joint second, KDs and magnetic couplings. That was a very emotional test. Let's go back to our loved presenter Craig, Iron Horse Railways, to see what he has to say. There we are guys. I really hope that you enjoyed this little video. It's been something I've wanted to do for a long time now, a good couple of years, to be absolutely honest with you, and it just circles around the fact that there is no such thing as a perfect coupling for monorailways. No matter what scale you go to, obviously when you get to a certain size then you have to use the real couplings, like on 5.5 inch gauge and 3.5 and even O gauge to a degree. I suppose the perfect coupling for a model railway would be one that looks like 3 links, but you can shunt with it like KDs and tension locks, and has the reliability and the cost and affordability of magnetic coupling. So any manufacturers out there watching that want to make a 3-link coupling system that works like that, hey, I'm your first customer right here. So there we are. Guys, if you've enjoyed this, please do like, share and subscribe to the channel. It does really help me, and this video took a hell of a lot of time to make. This is my one day off this week. I'm back at work tomorrow and I'm gonna have to edit it today. I work on my own. I don't have a production team. I film everything myself, write everything myself, and do all the editing and production work and the meta tags and all the boring stuff myself as well. So thank you for watching to this point. If you feel like leaving a super thanks, please do. That also helps going towards the channel. I will see you all next time on Iron Horse Railways. Do take care of yourselves. Bye bye for now.